Collections and credit management. If we're lucky enough to start selling stuff, we got to collect the cash. So this segment will talk about collections and credit management. Sometimes it's not an issue. You may have an online business where you're doing, people put in their credit card numbers, or you got you're at a vending machine, or you're doing something like that, and then cash is not a problem, and there's really not much risk to that. However, if you're going to go into business, you're going to do business to business, you're going to start having credit terms or payments and so forth, then you got some risk. Before you start, you need to know what terms you can provide your customers. Now, you may have terms in your mind that you can provide. There's terms your customers will accept. Maybe two different worlds. You're gonna have to learn what is the standard in the industry that you're going into. When I started, I'm like, I'm gonna give everybody 30 days and that's it, and I expect to check on 30 days. Life isn't that good. The best paying customers in the world pay 15 days late. The best ones, the ones you love to have, pay 15 days late. And if it's 30, it's 45. If it's 60, it's 75. If you're lucky. So you may grow out there and you're doing your cash flow, and you say, hey, listen, if I sell this, I got to pay my vendors. I'm going to see my cash in 30s. Sometimes people pay 60 days late, 45 days late. You don't know what the industry standard is. So you cannot prepare for saying you think you're going to receive your check on the 30 days. It just never happens. So you need to know, what is that impact on your cash flow? Sometimes you got some surprises when you're starting out. Customers paying, just think about it. If you're planning on the cash in 30 days and the customer doesn't pay for 90, they're 60 days late. Think about the crippling effect that could have on cash flow, especially early in your business when you really don't have any credit terms with your suppliers because you're just establishing yourself. So you have to think about, oh my God, I think I'm getting my money in 30, I might not get it till 90. What happens if I get more orders and I need to pay my supplier because I haven't established credit yet because I'm new? So you have to think about that. So when's the actual money gonna be deposited in the bank versus what are your terms? Very, very critical that you understand that. Understand what industry you're going into and how often do people pay on time. Larger customer, let's say you get a huge contract, right? And you need something that's gonna go on for maybe 120 days. Are there milestone billings? Can you bill every 30 days? Can you get a down payment? What are you gonna do when you get these large contracts? You might have a lawyer that is gonna have to look at it, get to set up the contract to make sure you're configured properly. What if there's penalties? What if you don't deliver on time? What if you have a problem with your supplier? Sometimes I always heard the old stories when you were supplying the old car companies, you shut down their production line, you had to pay some outrageous number per minute until they got their product. Those are things you got to consider if you go into big companies. There's inspection fees. What happens if they say, okay, we have a little bit of a quality problem, now we want all this stuff inspected. I had a company once that I sold, and we had a 0.01 rate where it was damaged. I had to take a third party to go in there and count 10,000 items, and it cost me $2,500. And I was on a quarantine vendor list. In other words, I could not sell them anymore until I got unquarantined. So I had to do that with a third party, pay them myself, an extra $2,500. Mind-boggling. So you got milestone billing, bonds. What are the final acceptance requirements to get your product in their building? You have to understand, what is the total cost of getting a big contract? It's not just, oh, you sign here, I start shipping things. There's a lot of provisions in there that you need to be aware of. You probably need to get legal advice if you're going into a big contract with a big company. Remember, a big company's got lawyers and everybody on staff that knows what they're doing, and we're just ourselves. So we're gonna have to get help. What's that gonna cost us? It may cost us a few $1,000s just to get the contract, and we still can get in trouble. Before we end our discussion on terms, you understand what terms are your vendors going to ask you for. Most likely you're going to have to pay in advance. I got a quick story on a letter of credit. So when I started out, my vendor said, Scott, we'll give you credit as long as we get a letter of credit. So I actually, believe it or not, wrote them a letter of credit, and I had a good personal credit rating, and I had my bank references, but it was all personal. And they said, no, you get 0 credit until you get a letter of credit. A letter of credit is something that's secured at the bank. I was lucky enough to have equity in my home, so I had to drive to the bank, put my home on the line. That was a letter of credit that I gave to my supplier. That supplier had first dibs on my home if I didn't pay. Think about that. First dibs on my home if I didn't pay. Very, very emotional trip to the bank there. So now you have to realize what's going to happen if you don't have established credit. No new suppliers are going to trust you. They won't take the risk. It's just not worth it. So you're going to either have to pay with Visa cards or credit cards or a letter of credit like I did or cash, whatever it is, you're going to have to find a way to get through that. So now you understand the risk of terms on one side and how you have to pay your suppliers, and the delta between those two dates, the date you write your check versus the date you get your check, the date you sign the front of the check before the date you sign the back of the check. What is that delta and how long does that happen? Think about it though. If your business grows really, really fast, that could be troublesome, because if you run out of credit with your supplier and you get a big order from a few customers and you can't deliver, they normally give you one chance. Once they realize you can't fulfill orders, they're not going to stop doing what they're doing because you can't fulfill orders. So you need to be really careful about growing too quick or not growing at all. There's a happy medium there, and you're going to have to need to measure that yourself. Here's a huge risk, and I didn't think this would happen to me when I started, but it's customer bankruptcy. You just don't think about it. You think, oh, no, I know this person, I've talked to this person and so forth. The bankruptcy is devastating. Now, I was lucky. I didn't get bankruptcies early on when I started. If I would have got the one bankruptcy I got in maybe my 5th year or 6th year, if I would have got that in year 1 or 2, out. I'm done. No business. I could not have survived it. Absolutely not. If you're lucky in a bankruptcy, if you're lucky to get paid anything, you might get 25 cents on the dollar. Think about that. If you're lucky, you might get 25 cents on the dollar. So we're going to have a plan on how to manage these risks. You just can't simply bill your customers and say, hey, I hope everything's good and they'll be fine and we're friends and we had lunch and so forth. No one knows the internal health of anyone else's company. So you have to use some caution when you're going after that. So think about it. Banks, credit card companies, they don't give you credit for free. Right down, just say, hey, here's a credit card, a $100,000 limit. Go have at it. And that's personal. Same thing with businesses. You have to find a way to limit this risk. Like I said, if I got hit early with a bankruptcy, I would have been done. I wouldn't have been sitting here talking to you right now. So that's luck that I had on my side, because I didn't have Bootcamp. I didn't even think about customer bankruptcy when I started. It's like, oh, I'll just know the people and I'm sure everything will work out. So you got to have a credit management program. This is really, really critical, because remember, when you start selling something, you get all fired up. I got a sale. It's not a sale until you get paid. Right? So you really have to take the emotion out of it when you get an order and understand, is this person capable of paying me? You have to think about that. So let's look at some RTRs, some reduce the risk strategies for customer bankruptcies. Customer bankruptcies, there's a bunch of them. There's type 7, 11, and 13. 11 and 13 are reorganization. They're going to try and pay you. Don't expect to get any payments for 4 to 7 months, if you get any payments at all. Chapter 7 means it's over. There's no chance. You really need, if the word bankruptcy comes up at all, you got to consult legal help, and you got to do it. There's a lot of rules. The first thing you should do, though, stop shipping. You hear the word bankruptcy in passing, whatever it is, you stop shipping. That sounds logical, but remember, when you're starting out, you're like, oh, they're probably not going to go bankrupt. You want the sales so bad that you may not think clearly. You have to think clearly. Money has no emotion. Either you get it or you don't. That's all there is to it. Sometimes you're not allowed to contact the customer. If they claim they're going bankruptcy, you are not allowed to contact them, negotiate anything. They can't pay you because you're buddies and not pay other suppliers. There's many, many, many rules. You can actually be sued if you go after the customer and try to work out a deal to get paid when they don't pay other people. Work with an attorney right away. None of us like the word attorney, but in this particular case, you need to know what the rules are, because if you violate the rules, you get yourself in a lot of trouble. File proof of claim right away. You got your invoices, when it was shipped, you might need proof of deliveries. Make sure you get on the list to get paid. That is critical. Money only gets distributed to the people who file their claim. If you don't file your claim with the bankruptcy attorney and the courts and so forth, you get nothing. Educate yourself on what is the proper process. What do I need to do? How do I make sure I stay on the list? Typically in bankruptcies, the bank gets first hit. They take everything, and then the leftovers go to the other people. And just because you're the largest creditor, let's assume you're the largest creditor, you generally only get the same percent as everybody else. So if they owe you $1,000 and you owe someone else $50, and they're going to pay everybody 10%, you only get $100. The other guy gets $5. You don't get the first thing and then these people at the end get nothing. Generally, you all get the same percent. Again, though, you need to consult legal advice with that, because that can change from case to case. We're talking about bankruptcy. Let's just talk about receivables. Collecting receivables. Everybody thinks, oh, I sent a bill and I see the check. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a plan with your receivables. Things to consider. Are you going to outsource it? So here you set up a relationship with a customer, and let's say they're starting to pay late. Are you going to spend your time doing doing it, or you're going to outsource it. Now, if you outsource it, sometimes you get people that are not, they're a little rough on your customers, which can create emotion. The customer's saying, I'm not going to be treated like that. I'll go buy from somebody else. So you have to make sure that you really, really plan how to do it. I like sending a statement every month. Anyone that is getting slow or whatever, just send them a statement, just a little reminder statement. You don't even have to put past dues or things like that to start, and then see if you're creating a habit of some sort. And if there's any sort of pattern and it breaks, you need to know that. And what are you going to do? You got to call during working hours. So it's going to take your time to work on your company to go call and get collections. And what happens when your customers have questions on invoices? Hey, I got invoice for 40 and I only got shipped 30. You're gonna have to find proof of deliveries. We call them PODs. You get those all the time. Oh, hey, wait a minute. I thought it was $7.99. You charged me $8.39. I thought it was this. I wasn't supposed to pay freight on this one. Dave told me free freight. There's a million things that happen with invoices. It's not just sending out an invoice and doing it. And you'd behoove yourself to question your own invoices that you're paying, because things happen, mistake. You keep honest people honest, but sometimes things happen and people don't even realize it. So you got to monitor your own invoices as well. What is your total cost to collect, resolve issues, rebill, handle returns, etc. There's a lot of cost involved with this. It's just not as simple as I invoice and someone pays me. You need to identify this process and the cost before you start. You need to factor it into your pricing. And part of your collections plan is your credit management. You have to have credit management. Reduce the risk of slow payment, no payment, or bankruptcy. You have to do a little physical on your customer to make sure that they're capable of paying you. So any disruptions in customer payments can have a great impact on cash flow. Look for patterns. Customer normally is paying you in 45, 45, 45, and it goes to 50, and it goes to 55, and 60, and 70. Something's going on there. You got to be a little bit suspicious, and you got to go investigate. And hey, there's times where people are busy. They have busy seasons. They pay quicker, and their slow seasons it take longer. You'll understand that when you get the patterns. But any break in pattern, you have to be suspicious of. It should raise a little bit of a red flag when you get a difference in the pattern. Okay, let's look at some RTR, reduce the risk strategies for credit management. Credit reviews. You have to check the health of the patient. The patient is your customer. Make sure they are healthy enough to pay you. There's the ability to pay and their willingness to pay. Those could be two different things sometimes. You have to make sure you understand what that customer is all about and they have the ability to pay you. You got distressed customers. Distressed customers act like they're your best friend because they need whatever you have. And guess what? They may not even plan on paying you. We've had that happen. Remember, it's not a sale till you collect. The emotion of a sale is so big, especially first year, year 0 through 3. As you get older and your business matures, sales are always great, but it's not as emotional. Early on, it's emotional. And if for some reason, if this customer comes out of the blue and they're distressed and they're going to give you an order, you got to make sure you evaluate that. You got to take the emotion out of it and look at it as dollars and cents. Some people ask for extended terms. You got to sit there. Wait a second. Why do you need extended terms? What's going on in this particular situation that someone's asking me for extended terms? You need to look at it literally without emotion. If you get some huge order and you're starting to have problems with this customer, their pattern changes, let's talk about a little, maybe a third down, cash on delivery, right? A third when the truck gets there, and then give them payments for a third. At least you're covered 2/3. You need to start, you need to have the courage to say, hey, listen, we're kind of out of our credit terms, and we need to make sure that we're both comfortable with this transaction. Don't take the risk. It's enticing when you get these big orders, but you need to make sure it works for both of you. And remember, a huge order that doesn't get paid could end your business, especially early on. You're making sales. You don't want to give donations. There's third-party monitoring companies that can watch and help you. Of course, you have to pay for that, but they can keep track of people, show if there's difference in their credit, different in their payment, different in the health of the company. You can use those as well, and they can provide guidance on certain organizations that you may not be able to penetrate enough to find out what's going on. Again, habits and patterns, the trends, any changes, anything that's going on, you need to pay attention to. Do credit reviews often, right? And I would do them at least 2-3 times a year. Make sure nothing's changed. Business is fragile. One thing I've learned over my 18 years is that business is fragile. Things can change tomorrow. Your customer could get a different buyer, lose a bunch of their business, start still buying stuff from you, and all of a sudden they can't pay for it. So things change quickly in the business world. There's a lot of names, big names that I grew up with, what I would never dream would have gone under. And they've gone under. You say, oh, there's no way that could possibly happen to them. Guess what? It happens to everybody. So business is a day-to-day thing. It's fragile. So don't ever get too comfortable with credit, because once you start giving product out and you don't get paid for it, everything rolls downhill. Remember that. Understand what impacts your receivables and how that impacts your cash flow. It's critical to your survival. If you stop getting paid by big customers and you need to pay your own bills, your suppliers are not going to be as patient. So you have to remember that it's critical that you get paid for them. Cash is king. 8 out of 10 businesses fail. Most of them fail because they run out of cash. You need to understand the total cost of an order. Collections, selling, shipments, the whole thing. You have to understand if you don't have 100% paid, then you lost money on this. You have to realize that the cash is king and that the credit is everything. Cash flow is the blood of your business. Don't ever take it lightly. Don't ever take it for granted. Don't ever say, oh, this could never happen to me. The one major bankruptcy I went through, if I would have put, I probably had 80 customers at that time. If I would have put 80 on a list of who I thought might go bankruptcy, she would have been 80, the last one. That's how surprising it can be. And I did a bad job of keeping track of her health. So make sure you keep track of your customer's health. It's the most important thing you can do. You need to sign the back of the checks, not the front of the checks. If you hear the word bankruptcy, you go into immediate action. Because I've never seen or heard, and I'm sure it has happened, of people that get 100% of the money once the word bankruptcy starts thrown around or something happens. I'm sure it has happened. It hasn't happened to me. 25 cents on a dollar, you're lucky. Most of them I got 0. Thank you.